These are top 10 mind-blowing conspiracies theories ever shared on Joe Rogan. Episode number 2178. Joe Rogan and Sam Morrill discuss the failed Trump assassination and the strange details. Episode number 1821. Joe Rogan, Bert Kreischer, and Tony Hinchcliffe explore wild time travel theories and the idea that time itself could loop forever.
It's crazy. Have you seen that new movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once?
No, but I keep hearing amazing things about it.
Yeah, we just saw it this past
Did you go to the movie theater?
weekend, yeah.
Look at you, like a regular person.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
How was it? Tell me what it's a multiverse kind of movie,
it's
right?
like that. She ends up figuring out how to switch into her different lives and like take different times, different lives that she's lived throughout all of time.
Wait, what the
and
fuck?
Fast forward and rewind and use these things to her advantage and try to accomplish things. It's crazy.
Oh, I love time travel.
Yeah, it's wild.
Everything Everywhere All at Once. You know, that was the theory that Terrence McKenna had to the thing that's going to change the universe is that one day someone's going to invent a time machine. And that when they invent a time machine, all time ceases to become linear. So you think if you have a time machine, well, I'll just go back to the time where they were making the pyramids and I'll watch them do it. That's not what it works like. What he was saying, you can't travel where there are no roads. So once a road gets built, then you can travel. So once a time machine gets invented, then anyone from the invention of the time machine forward to forever can come back to that moment and can go to any point in time from that moment to the end of time. So all time ceases to be linear. So there's no like tomorrow will be Wednesday and the next day will be Thursday. No. It's everything happens everywhere all at once. So people can travel back and forth through time. You can never own anything because someone could just travel through time and take it away from you when you weren't looking. Like as time travel gets more and more sophisticated, you can go back and forth in time while you're talking to people. You know, if you don't like what you said, you could rewind and start all over again. If you're in an argument with your wife, you can go to the library and get information and come back and go, actually, you know, Herodotus once said, and then bam, your wife thinks you're the smartest guy in the world. Like this, but there would be no normal life anymore. It would the world itself would be completely unrecognizable because time would mean nothing. You'd be able to travel back and forth through time.
All right, so then, where would you go right now? Just if I could do, we can time travel right now. Go back in
the past.
In the past,
well,
what's one thing you'd like to see again?
See, that would be a different kind of time travel. That's an unrealistic theatrical version of time travel because, like you said, once time is invented, once time travel is invented, that's the time you can start traveling. So you can't
go before that,
right?
Okay.
So like here we are. It's May of 2022. If time travel is invented in June, we're not going back to April. You can't go back to April.
Okay.
But you can go from June to a million years in the future and see what people look like. You'll be able to do that. But they'll be able to come back too, and everything's going to be happening everywhere all at once. There's not going to be any sort of structure to life. There's not going to be anything in terms of money, possessions. As long as you could freely time travel, there will be no time. Everything's going to be moving around, and also instantaneously you'll become immortal. Because whatever we have right now in terms of technology, what we're going to have in a million years is going to be godlike. And you're going to be able to travel to that if, in fact, that actually does even take place. Because the question becomes, like, what is the future if time travel does exist? So if time travel exists in June of 2022, is there even a future? Like, does it even take place? Because how can anybody invent things when they can just travel to a point where someone invented it already? But how are they going to invent it already if you can just travel to the future? And do they invent things still? Or do people, if they do invent things, what's to stop people from going back before them and taking the idea and introducing it before that? Thus, there'll be no intellectual property because there'll be no way to say you came up with it first. It won't exist.
Carlos Mencia will be the greatest comedian in the world. Just smashing.
Wow.
Think about that.
Is there someone working on time machines right now? There's got to be, right?
Well, there's a guy named Ronald Millett. I think he's out of the University of Connecticut, if you Google this. And he's got the craziest Spider-Man character origin story. His father died, And he became obsessed with time travel because he wanted to go back in time and save his father. So he became a professor studying time travel, and he came up with a workable model of a time machine, but it requires immense, immense power. That's him. Ron Millett built a device that illustrates the principles he believes could be used to build a time machine. But he was one of the people that came up with one of the first people to come up with the realization or the revelation that once that time machine was invented,
his dad died in
from
Vietnam.
then, yeah. But it is really like a comic book superhero sort of origin story, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a great origin story.
Yeah. So this guy has become obsessed and has been working on it for decades. And they think they have a working model of, like at least a theoretical model of a time machine, but it just requires like the power of the sun. It requires immense power. And I think there's a guy from, the early 19th century, Kurt Gödel. He wasn't from the early 19th century, early 20th century. And he had a working model of a time machine too, but it involved something as large as like the solar system. Like you needed a machine the size of a solar system or something crazy. Yeah. Kurt Gödel in 1949 found a solution to the field equations of general relativity which described a space-time with some unusual properties. This Gödel universe permitted closed time-like curves, hence a kind of time travel, and it did not admit decomposition into the successive moments of time. Yeah, so he had...
I didn't understand any of that sentence. I mean, like I'm so stupid that if I start to realize what that means, it gives me a panic attack. Like as you talk about, there's no anything ever anywhere, or when you just mentioned the universe, and I realize there is something really up there. Like
it's not just up there.
It's out there.
Yeah, it's all around you.
That I don't
for
like
infinity.
That fucking gives me a panic attack immediately.
Yeah, it'll give you a panic attack if you really do stop and give it time and think about it. It's an amazing thing.
Do you think that they'll be able to take, like, I don't know if we have to go to computer modeling, but take the data of like this video, for instance, where these kids are in 1901, and put that into like virtual reality, where you could then insert yourself to be in there. You can't affect anything, but you could at least experience and hear what it's like. Yeah,
but you probably get an interpretation of it. Like, say if they wanted to do that today and they had this unbelievable ability to create people and images and places, and they decided to show you the construction of the pyramids, they would just be guessing.
Episode number 2382. Joe Rogan and Andrew Santino question the bizarre details and possible cover-up behind the Charlie Kirk assassination. 1428. Joe Rogan and Brian Greene explore what existed before the Big Bang and the idea of an infinite multiverse.
Here's the thing that I've always wanted to ask someone like you. What do you think was happening before the Big Bang?
Yeah, it's a deep question and a subtle one, and there's sort of two ways that I like to think about that question. One is, it could be that the Big Bang was an interesting event, but not the first event in the totality of reality. It could have been the first event that sparked the expansion of our part of space, but it could be that there's a grander realm of space within which we sit as a small part, and that grander realm may have been here for a far longer period of time. It may have experienced its own Big Bangs, maybe a collection of Big Bangs that may extend infinitely far into the past. So it could be that the answer to the question of what happened before the Big Bang is a lot of other Big Bangs or a lot of other quantum events that were taking place in a larger landscape of reality than we have direct access to. However, another answer is that the very question may not make as much sense as the words seem to suggest. We know how to parse that sentence. We know what it means to talk about the moment before the Big Bang because we know how to talk about the moment before your birth or the moment before the Civil War or the moment before any event that happened in the world. We fully understand the meaning of that kind of sentence. But it could be that when it comes to the Big Bang, the sentence actually doesn't mean anything. It could be that the Big Bang was the place where time itself started. And Hawking himself had a wonderful analogy to get this across. He said, look, I'll dress it up a little bit. Imagine you're walking on planet Earth and you pass by someone. You say, hey, can you point me in the direction of north? I want to walk in the northward direction. They point you, continue to walk. You pass by somebody else, say, hey, which way is further north? And they point you in that direction. But when you get to the North Pole and talk to somebody there and say, hey, how do I go further north? They look at you and say, whoa, that question doesn't mean anything because this is where north begins. There's no notion of going further north than the North Pole. And it could be that that spatial metaphor applies to time. Talk about 1 billion years ago or 10 billion years ago, but if you go to 13.8 billion years ago, the Big Bang, that may be where time started. And you can't go further back in time than the very origin of time itself.
That freaks me out.
Yeah.
See, that's one that it gets in your head. And you go, what do you mean beginning of time?
Yeah.
Why would time have a beginning?
Good. And it could be that time is an emergent quality of reality. I give you an analogy, boy. What I mean by that is we all know what temperature means intuitively. Something's hot, you feel it. Something's cold, you feel it. Your body understands those concepts. What physics has done is it's gone deeper into the concept of temperature and revealed that it is nothing but the average motion of the particles making up the environment. So if the molecules are moving really quickly, you've got a hot environment. If the molecules are really moving slowly, it's a cold environment. So temperature emerges from the motion of particles. So if you have like one particle, you can't really talk about it being hot or cold because you need a conglomerate. You need an agglomeration of particles to be able to talk about their average motion. And in that sense, temperature is this emergent idea that rests upon more fundamental ideas, the molecules and atoms that make up reality. Maybe that's true of time. Maybe time as we know it is a property that only makes sense in certain environments when there's enough stuff arranged in the right patterns. But fundamentally, maybe there are atoms or molecules of time which, when not arranged in the form that we are familiar with, don't yield time as we know it. Time itself may be a quality of the world that exists here in this environment, but doesn't even apply in other environments that are configured radically differently.
Whoa. That's a heavy one.
Yeah.
That's a heavy one. What also is a heavy one is what caused the Big Bang?
Yeah.
Like, why would something smaller than the head of a pin become everything that we see in the cosmos?
Yeah. So there are ideas for the answer to that question. Look, all of this is tentative because it's very hard to do measurements that go all the way back to the beginning. We have astronomical observations that we need to be sure are compatible with the predictions of our theories and so forth. So we as good scientists do what needs to be done to try to test these ideas. But the idea that I think most physicists or cosmologists buy into at the moment is that gravity can have two manifestations. The usual form of gravity that you and I know about is the attractive version. You drop something toward the Earth and it moves downward because the Earth and the object pull on each other. That's the ordinary gravity that we experience every day of our lives. But Einstein's equations actually allow gravity to also be repulsive. It can push outward as opposed to just pulling inward. And this is something that we have never experienced because the gravity created by a rocky object like the Earth is always the attractive variety. The gravity created by the sun, again, a compact object, is always the attractive variety. But Einstein's math shows that if you don't have a rocky object that's isolated in space, but rather energy that is uniformly spread through a region of space, that kind of entity yields repulsive gravity. Why is that important to your question? If the very early universe, that little tiny head of a pin that you're talking about, if it was filled with a uniform bath of this energy, we call it the inflaton field. The name doesn't matter. But if it was filled with that energy, it would have been subject to repulsive gravity. What does repulsive gravity do? Pushes everything apart, causes everything to rush outward. So the bang of the Big Bang may have been a spark of repulsive gravity operating with a tiny region of space that pushed everything apart.
And this concept of repulsive gravity is just theoretical? Have we observed any sort of element in the universe that... It
is theoretical, but it's at a level of understanding that I think most physicists would say causes it to migrate into the camp of established understanding of how gravity works. So number one, Einstein's equations have now been tested over and over again in a whole variety of circumstances. The detection of gravitational waves just a couple of years ago is like the crowning triumph of Einstein's math. 100 years ago, the math says there should be ripples in the fabric of space. 100 years later, we finally detect ripples in the fabric of space. So we are very comfortable with any prediction that comes out of Einstein's mathematics. And right in the mathematics is the prediction of what I was just describing. You've got uniform energy in a region, repulsive gravity. The other thing is we currently witness that the expansion of the universe is speeding up, not slowing down. Since the 1920s, everybody thought that, yes, the universe is expanding, but it will slow down over time. Why? Because gravity pulls things back together. You throw an apple upward, it doesn't go up faster and faster. It goes up slower and slower because the Earth's gravity pulls it back. Everybody thought that would apply to the universe as a whole. It's expanding, but expanding ever slower. The observations in 1998, culminated in 1998, which won the 2011 Nobel Prize, showed that the distant galaxies are moving away ever more quickly. The expansion of space is speeding up over time. It's accelerating. How do we explain that? The best explanation we currently have is repulsive gravity. We believe even today the universe is suffused with a bath of energy. We call it dark energy. We believe it's uniformly going through space. I like to think of it almost like as a Turkish sauna. It's like the steam filling the sauna, this energy filling space. And that repulsive gravity, we believe, is responsible for the observations that the distant galaxies are rushing away faster and faster over time. So it's circumstantial, but the case for repulsive gravity is quite strong.
And what would have caused it to coalesce? What would have caused it to compress initially? Like, why would all that matter? Be in this tiny, less than a pin-sized object?
So I have no idea. And nobody else on planet Earth has any real idea but we do have theories. And one of the theories suggests that in the very early universe, it was a highly chaotic environment, very hot, with all the fields fluctuating wildly up and down. And the idea would be that if you wait long enough, where it's hard to know what wait means in this environment, but don't press me on my definition of time back then, just sort of intuitively. If you wait long enough, on rare occasions, the energy will just happen to flatten out in a region, become uniform, and then that region explosively inflates, grows large. So, imagine you're looking at a pot of boiling water. The surface is, of course, wildly undulating up and down. But if you wait long enough, very long time, since you've never seen it, neither have I, there will be a little patch on the surface of that boiling water that flattens out. Why? That only means that the water molecules happen for an instant to be moving in just the right way to keep that little patch of water from wildly bubbling. It will happen. It's rare, but if you wait long enough, it will occur. Similarly, the widely undulating fields in the early universe, if you wait long enough, a patch will flatten out. You get the uniform energy. Plug it into Einstein's equations, that region explosively inflates. And I mean explosively. It can go from a size that's much less than an atomic diameter to larger than the observable universe in far less than a blink of an eye, in 10 to the minus 30, 10 to the minus 35 seconds. That's how powerful repulsive gravity can be.
That is so baffling.
Yeah.
So before this happens, you just have, in this theory, you just have all of this energy sort of randomly interacting with other energy in the universe with no physical objects.
Yep.
And that could have been forever.
That could, and in fact, that's the main point. There's nobody who is hanging around looking at their watch saying, good God, when is this Big Bang going to finally happen? So you can have this cosmological pre-show. You can have it last as long as you like. The only thing that you need to happen is that sooner or later, a region flattens out, and then the cosmological show begins.
And if we're looking at this model of the universe being this infinite universes with different characteristics and different qualities to them, this could be happening throughout infinity, all over the place.
Yeah, and in fact, this so-called inflationary cosmology is the technical name for the subject, says that. It says that it's quite likely that this explosive inflation of the region that we currently inhabit, it was just one of many such events. And therefore, there are other far-flung regions throughout this larger cosmological landscape where things have also inflated, but the details can be different. The physical details can differ from what we are familiar with. And the differences can be small, temperature differences in one part of space versus another, or they can be far more significant. Even the particles that make up that other realm may be different from the particles that make up our realm. Their masses can be different. Their charges can be different. Their fundamental physical features can be different. So out there in that wider cosmological landscape, it can be the wild, wild west of realities.
And they don't have to worry about proton deterioration.
There may be realms in which they don't have to worry about protons falling apart. The really crazy idea is that if you're very careful mathematically in analyzing these theories, you realize that there have to be realms out there that duplicate ours as well. Many can be different, but there have to be versions of this reality that are also instantiated, occur out there in other realms. So you come to these crazy sounding, sci-fi sounding ideas that you and I are having this conversation out there in other distant realms.
An infinite number of times.
Perhaps infinite number of times. And moreover, small differences can also arise in these other realms where maybe our positions are interchanged at the table, or, maybe your name is, Joe Green and I'm Brian Rogan, or there's like strange realities that can be taking place. And this is not an overworked theorist's imagination. This is the careful, dispassionate analysis of the mathematical equations. Now, I should say there are some physicists who see this implication and say, whoa, you guys have fallen off the deep end. Your theory has imploded because any theory that predicts that kind of a wealth of realities that are kind of untestable because they're so far away that we will never interact with them, that's the kind of theory that we have been trained to avoid, to excise. However, the more forward thinking I like to describe us, physicists say, hey, math has proven to be a very valuable guide over the course of hundreds of years. And if this is where the math is taking us, it's at least worthy of our attention to investigate it fully and possibly come to the conclusion that this is how reality actually behaves.
Jesus.
Episode number 2401, Joe Rogan and Avi Loeb discuss a mysterious interstellar object that might be alien technology.
Things are getting very wild.
Yeah, there is a lot of misinformation. Some people said, I invented 3i Atlas, this object, in order to distract attention from the Epstein files.
Is that what people are saying?
Yeah, and I said, look, this object is the size of Manhattan Island. It's at 4.5 times the Earth-Sun separation. If I was able to put it out there, I would be more powerful than the Pope. And because we're talking about a giant object that you can see from any place on Earth. You can buy online a telescope that will allow you, 0.5 meter in size, that will allow you to see it. It's out there. It cannot be faked.
Well, those people are fools. You can't listen to those people.
I don't listen to those. I don't listen to many people,
Initially, a lot of people were dismissing your concerns, and they were saying that this object is nothing but a comet, and it's very normal. But then as it got closer and as we got more data, it seems like you're correct.
Well,
this is a very unusual object.
There is something really important to recognize here, that usually when you deal with scientific matters, they have very little impact on the future of humanity. Very little. If the neutrino has a little bit of a mass, doesn't really matter. When we discovered the Higgs boson, the biggest impact was to confirm some idea we had back in the 60s. And, obviously that affected, those people who got the Nobel Prize. But most of us continued as if nothing happened. However, here, if we ever encounter alien technology, everything will change. It will affect the financial markets. It will affect politics in a major way. So my point is simple. This is different than other scientific matters, and the intelligence agencies know very well that events with very small probability have to be considered seriously because they could have major implications. Just think about October 7th. The Israeli intelligence agencies had a theory that the Hamas will do nothing. And they got data that indicated something is going on out there, but they dismissed it because of their theory. Now, because as a result of their mistake, which was clearly a blunder, a lot of people died on both sides. For that, this could have been avoided if they were to consider a black swan event, an event that you put a small probability for it happening, but you look at anomalies in the data and say, look, the implications are so huge, we have to consider it. And, this idea was already considered by the philosopher mathematician Blaise Pascal. He talked about God. And he said, look, of course, you might think that God doesn't exist. The probability for that is small, but the implications, if God exists, the implications are so huge that we have to discuss it. That was the argument, Pascal's wager. And the intelligence agencies know that. Believe me, the Israeli intelligence agencies will not make that mistake again. Now, here comes an object from outside the solar system, and it shows anomalies. The scientists would say we should be as careful as possible at talking about anything other than a rock. Now, they say that when they know that humanity launched a lot of space junk, a lot of technological objects to space. And we also know that there are 100 billion stars like the sun in the Milky Way galaxy alone. Most of them formed billions of years before the sun. And there are billions of Earth-Sun analogs. Now, we all believe that we came out of a soup of chemicals. That's the scientific narrative of how human intelligence came on this earth. And so it's quite likely that, we are not the first one. Sorry to break the news, Elon Musk was probably not the most accomplished space entrepreneur since the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago. And therefore, we should consider the possibility that things like us existed long before us. And you can ask the question, how long does it take our own technology, the Voyager spacecraft that we launched out of the solar system, how long does it take it to move to the opposite side of the Milky Way galaxy? Thousands of light years away, it takes less than 1 billion years. And that means that all these civilizations that had their history initiated billions of years before ours could have done it. And all we need to do as responsible scientists is to check if among all the rocks that come from outside of our backyard are really rocks, or maybe one of these objects might be a tennis ball that was thrown by a neighbor. And the reason I say that is, we live at our home, on Earth, next to the sun. We look around us in the cosmic street, and we see a lot of houses just like ours. There are billions of them, probably. Now, my colleagues, those scientists who think traditionally, they say, microbes came to Earth very early, therefore they must be everywhere. So let's define our highest priority, searching for microbes on other houses in our cosmic street. And I say, good, you can do that from the vantage point of your home. You can look through the window and search for microbes in your neighbors' yards, but you would need to put $10 billion to develop a big enough instrument that would be able to detect the chemical fingerprints of microbes, on exoplanets. And think about the possibility that there is a resident in one of those houses. That resident might show up in your front door at some point, or you might see an object that arrives to your backyard or your mailbox from that resident.
A black swan event.
A black swan event. Or you might see some construction project from a distance. That might be easier to detect than microbes. So we should hedge our bets. We should invest billions of dollars on both fronts. At the moment, the scientific community is willing to allocate more than $10 billion to searching for microbes, but no recommendation is made to allocate any federal funding to the search for intelligence. And I say that is an oversight.
Let's go back to, I don't want one more time. Oumuamua. Okay, yeah. I don't want to screw it up. How large was that?
That was the size of a football field.
Okay, so
of over 100 meters.
Small in comparison to 3I Atlas.
Oh yeah, that's my point, that 3I Atlas is 1 million times more massive, at least 1 million times more massive than Oumuamua. Right. And I immediately, as it was discovered, it was July 1st, and my wife asked me to go on vacation to Aruba 2 days later. And as I was going on the plane and as I arrived there, I realized, wait, that doesn't make sense, because we should have seen millions of Oumuamuas before we saw this one. It's so big. And I also realized there is not enough rocky material per unit volume in interstellar space to deliver such a giant rock into the inner solar system within a period of a decade. You would expect it at the very optimistic scenario where you package all the material into objects that are 5 kilometers in diameter. You would imagine once per 10,000 years. So I wrote immediately a scientific paper. My wife was not happy that, on our vacation, I was sitting on my computer, but I just couldn't resist it.
Right.
And by the way, this paper I submitted for publication. That was July 3rd or something. And then the editor said, oh, the paper is fine, but you have a concluding sentence at the end where you say, well, unless the object is smaller than estimated, maybe it was targeting the inner source. That was my solution to say, one way out of this dilemma of why is it so big is if it was targeting the inner solar system by design. And indeed, the trajectory is aligned with the plane of the planets around the sun to within 5 degrees. The chance for that at random is 1 in 500, okay? And it's moving in a retrograde trajectory opposite to the motion of the planets, which is ideal for it to release mini probes that will get into the planets. It gets close to Mars, it gets close to Jupiter, it goes on the opposite side of the sun relative to Earth when it's closest to the sun. And that's the time when a spacecraft could do a maneuver to take advantage of the sun's gravitational assist. All of these are interesting indications that may imply that some intelligence designed the trajectory. So I had one sentence at the end of the paper saying, maybe the trajectory was designed. And the editor said, no. The paper will not get published unless you remove that sentence.
Wow.
So now when you listen to comet experts that say, well, this claim or that claim was never published in a peer-reviewed journal, guess what? They are the editors or the reviewers who are blocking the discussion on possibilities. And I think it's inappropriate, especially in the case of alien technology, because it could be a black swan event. It could be something that affects the future of humanity. And if we behave, very conservatively, we might not last very long.
Well, it's also arrogant.
It's arrogant.
Yeah. This object shows that there's no iron.
Oh, no. So then the composition of the plume of gas around
this is before you knew about the composition.
That's right.
That you wrote this paper.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
so as time is going on, you are being shown to be correct.
Well, we found more anomalies.
More anomalies. So this is not a normal thing.
Not a normal thing. So for one thing, there was a glow that looks like an extended feature. And everyone said, oh, that's a tail. That's the signature of a comet.
Right.
And I said, wait a minute. It's pointing towards the sun. It's not pointing away from the sun. Usually cometary tails are made of dust and gas, which is pushed back away from the sun by the radiation and the solar wind, and so this one was pointed towards the sun, not away from the sun. And the question is, why? And actually, I calculated that, it appeared very clearly in the sharpest image we had from the Hubble Space Telescope, which showed an elongation by a factor of 2 towards the sun. But we were looking at it like a cigar. We were looking almost along the cigar long axis, within 10 degrees of the object-sun axis. So we were looking almost edge-on. Mm-hmm. And I calculated if you were to correct for that, this would be a feature that is 10 times longer than it is wide. and that means it's like a jet. So the object had a jet in front of it towards the sun. The question is why? And, the comet experts ignored it and just said, well, comets are strange. Who knows? But my point is, this is a blind date of interstellar proportions. And my advice on blind dates is not to speak or say what you think this is, but to observe the other side. The best way to respond to a blind date is to observe the other side. Don't speak, just observe the other side, because it may be different than what you think. And maybe, on one of the dates, you will have a serial killer on the other side.
Oh, boy. Now, explain, if you could, how we know the composition of this thing.
So we can figure out composition of a plume of gas by taking a spectrum of it, which means you basically have some kind of a prism that breaks, that light with different wavelengths is bent at different angles. And so you spread the light into the different colors. And if you do that, you can find the fingerprints, the spectral fingerprints of specific atoms or molecules, because each atom or molecule has transitions. I taught it just 2 days ago in a class that I teach that is obligatory at the Harvard Astronomy Department, where I was chair for a decade, like between 2011 2020. So this is the mandatory class, and I just taught how, spectral lines emitted by atoms and molecules just 2 days ago. So this is a very well-known thing, and we know the wavelengths of those, and we use them to identify the composition. We know which atoms produce these spectral lines, the fingerprints. It's just like fingerprints, okay? And so what was found, and that's by multiple teams, there are 3 papers on that, we found nickel, a lot of nickel, but very little iron. At first, no iron whatsoever. Now, usually in all the comets in the past, from the solar system and also from interstellar space, there is one comet, Borisov, that was found. It's the second interstellar object, which looked just like a familiar comet. I had nothing to say about that one. It looked like a comet, behaved like a comet. It was a comet, but it had similar abundances of nickel and iron. The only place where we found before much more nickel than iron is in alloys that we produce industrially. For example, for aerospace applications. Nickel alloys have a lot of nickel, no iron. So maybe the skin of this object is industrially produced. That was my suggestion. But what the authors of these papers said is maybe nature is capable of going through the same chemical pathway of producing nickel without iron as we do in our industries. So they made the conjecture that this carbonyl pathway, which is well known in the industry world, carbonyl is the pathway, the name of the pathway. They said, well, maybe this carbonyl pathway happens in nature. We have never seen it before, but that is their explanation.
Episode number 2032. Rogan, Penn, and Gabbert on JFK, the hidden Zapruder film, and rising public distrust.
Fight Companion's fun.
It is.
Have a little whiskey, watch the fights, talk a little shit. Eddie Bravo brings up some crazy conspiracies.
Man.
Every time.
This time, Eddie's out, so Sam Tripoli's in. We brought in he's even more deep into the world of conspiracy.
Wow.
So, and he's hilarious. That'll be fun.
Conspiracy theory is the code name for spoiler alert now, right?
Right. It was invented, the term conspiracy theories was invented after they conspired to kill the president. That's when conspiracy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, conspiracy theory. The term conspiracy theory started getting thrown around right around the time that Kennedy got assassinated. Wow. And it was directly because there were so many people that had all these theories. There was all these stories about the shots from the grassy knoll. Mm-hmm. And until Dick Gregory went on the Geraldo Rivera show, which I think was 11 years later. What year was it that Dick Gregory went on Geraldo Rivera and showed the Zapruder footage?
Says this was they used
many years later, like at least 8 years later.
Right.
What
after the assassination?
It says
they used it before that. Yeah,
but it was a different assassination attempt.
Oh, it was another assassination
Garfield.
attempt. Garfield.
Oh,
Interesting. Interesting.
Are we talking-
In 1881. Interesting.
Listed on a piece
Oh,
of paper.
conspiracy theorist.
Interesting.
Wait, when did the Zapruder film come out?
So they had the Zapruder film. I think his name was Abraham Zapruder. He was at the scene and he was filming the president as he was driving down. And as he was driving down, he caught the shots. He caught the shot to the neck, and he sees Kennedy hold at his neck, and then he sees the head go back and to the left. So 1975. Okay, think about that. The assassination was 63. So
Yeah,
75.
what was in
12.
63? What was in 63?
63, Kennedy was assassinated.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Yes.
there's like this
But
was
the
the
Why did
Zapruder
it take
film
that
was
long?
released by Dick Gregory, who is a stand-up comedian.
Wow.
Dick Gregory brought it to the Geraldo Rivera show with this other gentleman, and then they played it for America. And the whole country got to see Kennedy's head go back into the left and this spray of blood. And everybody's like, wait,
This was-
what? What happened? What happened?
Did they ever say why it took so long?
because it's fake. No.
Because it
Well,
was owned.
something's going
no,
on.
no. It was owned by Life. So I believe what happened was Zapruder sold it to Life. Life had it and they wouldn't release it. So they thought it was too disturbing, or
Maybe
you have
they
to-
were told not to.
We also
Different time.
have to remember that back then there was no VCRs.
Yeah,
There's, like, it's very hard to watch something like
Right.
this. You'd have to have one of those reel-to-reel cameras that you could set up and watch. I mean, like, nobody watched films
Yeah.
at home.
Right.
You watched what was on television
Right.
back then. So
Interesting.
when they played that, this was monumental. This is not something, and then you had to be there to see it. You couldn't just pause it. You couldn't rewind it. There was none of that. There was
Right? No DVR.
and you couldn't tell your friends on social media. You had to like go to work the next day and go, "Did you see that
Right.
Geraldo Rivera show?" Which is, by the way, I think it was on late at night too.
I think it actually says good morning or good night. Hold on.
I think it's
that
a
what-
Good night,
late.
America. Yeah, good night.
I think it was a late night show. And
Is that
so
what blew Geraldo up?
no,
or he was already
Geraldo
big?
was already doing well. He was already an established journalist, which is why he was the host of that show.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was late at night, so fucking nobody was watching.
Right.
You know, like a small amount of people were watching. And then, you know, they play this, they see it once, and they go, what the fuck did I just see? And then it takes forever for books to come out.
Sure.
And now you got
Strange.
Tucker Carlson on Fox News saying the CIA killed Kennedy. And you're like, what did he just say?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Did he just say that on TV? Like, what?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, imagine how long it took for somebody to find out who the president was before the telegraph type
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
2 years and imagine those elections.
Oh, my God. Right.
The checks and balances.
right.
Right?
Right. Like when Washington. Imagine if we
Makes
found out
you
that
wonder.
Washington stole the election.
Right? It's funny, right?
It
a
is
few
funny.
votes here
It
and
is
there.
funny. What if we found out Lincoln was a total
Thomas
fraud?
Jefferson, right?
Right. They all stole the election. Like, what?
Man,
Had people assassinated that
Oh
voted
my
incorrectly.
gosh.
it's
Yeah.
amazing.
But Lincoln ran and lost like 5 times or something, right? Before
did he
he
really?
won. I don't remember if it was for president or when he ran for a different office, but
Back then, they would stand in front of the whole town, like on a literal soapbox, and talk for hours.
yeah,
Hours and hours in
Yeah.
front of everybody.
Yeah.
Explaining what they were going to do.
yeah, amazing.
So you gotta imagine that when this Zapruder film came out, that was a moment where, like, you gotta also realize this is like during the time of the Vietnam War. So
Right.
there's already massive distrust in government, and people are like, well, you know, what happened exactly? And then the books start coming out. You know, books start
Yeah.
coming out like Best Evidence by David Lifton.
12 years later.
Yeah,
12
later.
years and nobody, but the CIA saw it.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
It wasn't. They were there. It wasn't until Dick Gregory, a stand-up comedian, brings it to the Geraldo Rivera show.
Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
right?
it's
I thought it was
incredible.
2 years. It came out 2 years late, but wow, 12 years.
12 years.
You know?
Yeah, so 75. So, you know, just imagine something that happened 12 years ago for us. Like, what? 2011? Which, by the way, that sounds crazy.
It does. That's great. That
2011
is
was
crazy.
12 years ago.
I know.
Like, what the fuck is
That is
happening? Time is
insane.
flying.
Too
Man,
fast. And
it
what
is.
like what a world we live in now, where even if the government tried to withhold information or tries to, as they do, with social media and all these different platforms, it's very, very hard. It's very, very hard. So they try to push a narrative, and then different people have questions, and it creates this environment where if the truth is not being told, people can pick up on it.
Episode 2374. Joe Rogan and Ben Van Kerkwijk discuss ancient civilizations, mysterious objects, and advanced aliens.
It sort of falls into this pattern.
Episode 948. Eddie Bravo debates Joe Rogan on conspiracies, from flat Earth to fake moon landings.
Is that what the fuck is going on with? I don't know. I don't know.
What, you think there's a conspiracy in the conspiracy?
I think maybe.
Is this a double negative? This is fucking double cross?
They're testing missiles?
Did you see that shit?
Yeah, did you see that from this?
For real?
It blew
Have you
up.
seen the parade? Show the clip of the parade where they show them, like the soldiers marching in a parade, and then they're
flexing on us.
and then they're bringing out the missiles.
They said they're ready to go to war.
They'll show that, and then they'll cut to Kim Jong Un, right, with
Totally
his
different
generals. Like there's a clip of like they're like. And they're like kind of watching, and and then they cut back to the parade, and it's the same clip, and then they go back to Kim Jong. It just, I don't know.
You think North Korea's fake?
I'm not saying it's fake. I'm just saying that. I'm not saying that it's fake. I'm just saying that Kim Jong Un could eat. He might be part of. I think they're all buddies. I think at the very top, the top of Russia, the top of the United States, the UK, they're just putting on a show, and he's designated villain when we need to distract people from this or that. Fucking Kim Jong Un is testing missiles.
Oh, wow.
He's testing missiles. He's gonna fire off one in
Eddie,
China.
Dude, there's a lot of people there. I don't know how many thousand that is, but there's a lot of people there.
They put on shows for people coming in. You come in, they're gonna put a show on for you.
But not
everywhere
like
you go,
right.
they're putting on. So there's actors everywhere already. This is just a lot of them.
I mean, they did it over a period of a couple days.
He's probably legit, but we've been lied to so much.
But Eddie, what
I
are you
wouldn't doubt
talking
it.
about? Like, what's a lie? All these people are actors, and they just live there. They're all
I don't
actors.
know.
They love this shit.
But think of how crazy that is. Wouldn't it be more likely that these poor people are just brainwashed? Because we know people get brainwashed. Wouldn't it be more likely that this is like the craziest?
When you take into consideration all the lies that we've been told, the faked moon missions, all this shit, nothing. I mean, this is nothing. They put together a bunch of people and made a fucking parade.
But
they faked the moon mission 6 times. And everybody believes that shit.
But cult
I'm
of
not
the
saying
Moonies.
I'm not saying they're actors. I'm just saying there's something fishy about the whole North Korea thing.
Of course it's
I'm not
fishy.
saying that it could be anything. I'm just saying I don't know. I'm saying it smells fishy. Something is not right about what they're telling us about North Korea.
It is a crazy little machine.
It's a big ass bomb. You're not buying that shit, Eddie? It only killed 90 people.
It looks like an explosion.
It's
it looks
a
like an
giant-
explosion.
That's a bomb. That's what
That looked like an
bombs
explosion
do.
to me.
That's what
what it
bombs
is.
do, though.
Episode number 2327. A.J. Gentile talks about restricted areas in the Grand Canyon, rumored ancient artifacts, and lost civilizations, possibly hidden by the government.
Well,
Conspiracy theory. Statue of Liberty resembles a painting of Lucifer, hinting at occult ties.
This theory posits it's all already happened. We're not living in the times just before tribulation. We're living after the 1,000-year reign of Christ. He's already been on earth. He has reigned for 1,000 years on earth with his resurrected saints and the elect who survived through tribulation.
Wouldn't there be a record of that?
And
doesn't it make sense that Christians would document that? I mean, if there's all this documentation.
No, he goes over like why if there was a record and we knew, then this wouldn't be a test. There wouldn't be a reason for the little satanic season. He let Satan out. He unchained him. There's a painting of Lucifer, and he looks just like the fucking Statue of Liberty, and he's got a chain, like a shackle around his ankle with a broken chain, and it's a famous painting of Lucifer, and he's like this, right? And then you look at the Statue of Liberty, that's not a woman, that's a dude. And it's got a fucking shackle around its
I thought it was a strong
ankle
chick.
with a broken chain.
The Statue of Liberty has a shackle around its ankle?
With a broken chain, just like the famous painting.
Find the painting
No,
of
you can
Lucifer.
find that. Just punch in Lucifer, Statue of Liberty.
So much fun.
Why the Statue of Liberty is not a chick.
That's much more.
That's not a chick.
It's not a chick.
That's not a chick.
It's a trans dude.
I just thought you had a strong jaw.
Strong jaw and some
nose.
Some boobs. Man boobs.
Look at that. That's a painting of Lucifer. Right?
Whoa.
Right?
Damn.
And you think that's a chick?
Go to the full
It could
painting?
be France just trolling us, though.
Look at the chain. He's got a...
Damn, Lucifer's dick is gone. He's got the Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah. Go to the...
there's the chain.
Look at that right there.
Whoa.
Boom. Look at that.
Wow.
Look at that. That's the foot of the Statue of Liberty. Broken chain with a shackle.
But Satan has two arms up in the air.
Yeah.
It's basically...
No, I don't know. This is just crazy conspiracy
The chain is
really identical.
It's basically
crazy
the Elon Musk. My heart goes out to you.
Yo. I'm going to say this. Dude. Jesus
that is
is
going to be still
Lord.
framed somewhere on that.
I'm all
on
in,
CNN.
dude. I'm all in with all this. With the Shroud of Turin, I'm all in, man. Christ is king.
Up and conveniently crop the image to make a false point. Oh, in that image. Yeah. In that right there.
I mean, they look pretty fucking similar.
No? 2 arms, 1 arm.
Look at the chin.
A dude with an arm up in the air.
Art. I mean, they modeled it off of something. They didn't just create it out of thin air usually, too.
You think that's a chick?
No chicks have a big ass bicep.
It does. The Statue of Liberty, the arm is huge. Look at that forearm. That's a jacked forearm.
Look at the fucking hands.
Yeah, it's a dude's hand, dude's arm, dude's face,
dude's nose.
Yeah. Statue of Liberty doesn't look like a guy. But it does look like it kind of has boobs.
And he's holding up
a torch.
A torch. Lucifer, that's the god of
Is there boobs in the Statue of Liberty?
illumination.
Like legit boobs? So get a full view of the Statue of Liberty.
She cheeked up?
Did they give her some implants later in the day?
On a Thursday afternoon.
Did they pump out the copper? Did they get under the copper and heat it up?
Yeah,
and push
I've never
it out
seen
a little
it
bit?
close up, man.
Yeah, I've never seen the boobs.
The thing does look trans now that we look at it.
Now that we look at it.
France is like,
It could be keying a Tesla. It could be keying a Tesla right now. Yeah. Okay, so here's the full image of it. Yeah, it doesn't look like it has boobs. That does not look like... Well, that right one looks like a little bit of a tit. That looks like a
Could
tit.
be gyno, though.
Could be gyno. Could be gyno. Ancient steroids.
That no chick, man. God damn, Eddie, why you fucked that up for me?
I don't know, man.
Pretty crazy.
I don't know. I've been going down rabbit holes.
France wanted the Statue of Liberty back.
Yeah. That looks like a chick.
They said, give it back to us. You guys are bad. Look at that.